Welcome, everyone, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your host and founder and CEO to Guide to HR. And I am going to broach a subject that I don't like, which is communication. For those that know me, you know I'm a math major. I love numbers. I love being analytical. So communication is not my jam. And I'm super excited to have Jason Anthoine on the call. And he's going to be talking about some strategies around communication and effective storytelling. Jason, welcome aboard and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, gosh, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me on, Guinevere. This is great. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Um, I guess I kind of got started in communications growing up in a small town in middle Georgia. My dad worked at a school bus factory. He was a foreman on the line. And my mother was a secretary at the bank, and they would come home from work, and just talk about what happened, what was good, what was not, what they liked, what they didn't like. And most kids would be like, oh, this is so boring. I'm not listening to any of this stuff. But somehow it kind of sunk in with me, and I just found it all fascinating. So when I went to college, I studied, public relations because that was kind of the closest thing that I could find out of the course catalog to major in that felt like that. And then my very first job right out of college was doing an employee newsletter for a bank in Atlanta. And now here it is 35 years later, and I'm still doing employee communications, employee experience, and culture change. And I love it because I'm sure everyone on listen to this podcast can agree with this. I mean, if you're going to be spending 50, 60, 80 hours a week at work, it really ought to matter. You ought to be getting some good stuff out of that. So my whole job is to help, work matter more, both for the leaders and their employees.
I love that. And it's so true. And I think, a lot of times just coming from the HR hat, like there's so much that needs to be done and not everyone is an expert. Well, no one's an expert at everything. Right.
Yeah,
and so
right.
understanding where your skill sets are and then leaning on those that have different skill sets to help lift you up. I think that's really important. So I'm super excited about diving in and talking about communications and learning from you. And hopefully the audience will do the same. So tell me, what is the most important thing that you see a founder should be focusing on around communications with their employees?
I think that the number one thing, certainly with the startups that I've worked with over my career, it feels like watching them all, it feels like the number one thing is they are the best at telling the story of that company and how and why they founded it. And probably after 6, 9, 12 months, maybe they are sick of telling that story. They're like, oh, not that again. But just like with advertising, you got to see an ad 9 times before you even remember it. Like, as soon as you're tired of saying it is when your employees are, finally listening and understanding it. So, A, you're the best person to tell that story. And B, tell it often because as soon as you think that people have heard it and they know it better than I do, they're really just now listening. So, and usually, your beliefs and mission and vision and value and purpose and all that's kind of built around that whole startup idea. So the more you reinforce that through that storytelling, particularly as the founder, I think the more personal it begins to feel for your employees.
Well, and you also have employees that come and go, right? So even though you might have been telling it every month for the last 12 months, you have people that had just started with you 2 months ago. So,
right.
They may have only heard it once or twice. And, when you're in a business and now you're 5 years, 10 years,
Yeah,
you have people that have just joined you. And
that's right.
to continue telling that story feels like, but this is 5, 10 years old. But to this person that just joined you, this
It's
group of people, it's
That's right.
new.
It's brand new. And the thing about that I think a lot of leaders, large or small organizations, don't really think about as much as they should. As soon as you tell those stories, then that's the stories that those employees are going to be telling when they're not at work. So people say, "Where do you work? What do you do?" They then begin telling their version of that founder's story. And you want them to tell it right. They want to tell it right. So the more often you can tell it, the easier it is for it to spread in the way that you would want it to.
Absolutely. So, thinking as a founder, I know a lot of founders who are very analytical engineering brains,
Mm-hmm.
and words might not necessarily be the easiest thing. And I know that I've also talked with founders who, they thought they said things that were very clear, but then five different stories come out of communication. So, how can you be effective in communication, especially when your audience of employees is a wide range of different individuals who maybe they're just starting their career from coming out of
Mm-hmm.
college. Maybe they're got 2 to 5 years under the belt, all the way up to, the more senior level staff, your maybe your middle managers that have 10,
Mm-hmm.
15 years of experience. It's really hard to like tailor your conversation and what you're sharing at an all hands or
Mm-hmm.
all teams or whatever you want to call your full company meeting,
Right.
where you can really resonate the message to everyone. So what are some of the maybe a key thing of like to think about as you're tailoring that
Yeah.
message and thinking about what you're saying?
That's great. And that is a big issue. I don't care where you work or how long you've been working there. It is, you've got so much diversity inside all organizations, particularly age groups and different jobs and,
Even
whether they're
locations. Some of these
location,
companies
yeah,
are international.
whether they're in person or not while they're listening or whatever it might be. So there's just so many things that you have to take into account. But to me, there's kind of two kind of rules. One, and everybody's probably heard this before. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. That
Mhm.
way, at least you are clear about your part of the communication. Their part of the communication is receiving that information. So you own the part about sending the information. So if you want it to be really clear, you need to be really clear. So tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them, just to make sure that everybody understands that. And then the second part is even if you are analytical or you've got, a PhD in engineering or, whatever fascinating complexities that you have in your career to get you to this point, don't use $5 words when a nickel word will do. You know, most of your employees, even if they have the same kind of degree you do, when they are not at work, all the communication that they receive in their personal lives isn't written at a PhD level, even though they might have PhDs or MBAs or whatever the advanced degrees might be. Most stuff is written at fourth, fifth, sixth grade level at the most. So if you're delivering something that's complex or complicated or has a lot of jargon or stuff that, this level of people will understand but will confuse the majority of the rest of them, just tell it simply. Like there's a good rule. Like how would you explain to an eighth grader what it is that you do all day long? Which
Mhm.
sounds to some people, oh well, I'm just talking down to my employees. I'm not giving them the credit maybe that's due to them. No, you're just making it as simple as possible for people to understand. And usually, when you default to that, then you don't have to spend as much time. All right, for this audience, I'm going to say it this way. And for this audience, I'm going to say it this way. If you just say it a normal, regular, simple way for all those audiences, then everyone can understand it, regardless of what level they're at.
Especially when you want them to take something out of what you're saying that's they
Mm-hmm.
need to internalize, incorporate, and take action on, whether that's because they need to do something different, whether that's
Right.
because you need them to like light the fire and move 10 times faster, and
That's
then
right.
understanding how their actions are going to impact the ultimate goal of the business is also a key factor too. Making it what's in it for me, right? It's like that what's in it for
That's right.
me.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Which again,
Everybody
at
listens
multiple
to that
levels.
same, yeah, everybody
Yeah.
listens to that same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? That's all anybody ever cares about, and that's a great point. And so the more time you can spend understanding truly that any kind of communications that you're doing in a business setting, whether it's internally or externally, all you're trying to do is to help people think, feel, say, and do whatever is best for your organization to help drive your results. That's it. That is all you are ever doing. And when you stray away from stuff like that, that's when it starts to get messy and complicated and cloudy. But if you just stick to what do we need people to think, feel, say, and do to help drive this business forward, and then build whatever comms you're going to build underneath that to deliver whatever you've got to say, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong because it's all in service of driving the business.
Yeah. So I feel like that is a great segue into providing our audience with maybe a couple of steps or one first step, especially if you're not really into communication or you feel kind of like, oh my gosh, this is like such a big hurdle. Where do
Mm-hmm.
I even get started? What's a
Yeah.
step or two that our audience can take to get to that point of making it simple and making sure that all audience levels and skill sets are understanding what you're trying to say?
Right. Well, I think the first one, and you kind of brought this one up, but to me, the first one, and this is one of my favorite quotes from the founder of the public supermarket chain. He had a saying, "Just begin, the rest is easy." So, whenever clients call me in, normally they are so afraid of trying something and having it go wrong that they're just
Mhm.
not doing anything. So, just begin, and the rest will be easy. And the way that you begin is with something easy. So let's pretend you're a leader of a startup and you're not that comfortable with video, or you think your voice sounds funny. Whether those things are true or not, you think that, which means there's like two reasons right there where you're never going to do certain things because it's going to be hard to convince you. So if that's true, fine, whatever it is. How about writing? How about when just go around to your employees and talk? How about just do the thing that feels most comfortable and most natural to you to start. And then the next thing that usually comes up is, well, I'm not a good writer, or I don't know how to put words together and, have them be, inspiring in front of a town hall or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Your employees aren't expecting you to be like an Oscar-worthy actor, or, they know you don't have a side career as, some television and movie star. They just want you to be yourself. And so it doesn't matter if you're the best writer. It doesn't matter if you are the best on camera. Just be who you are. Tell the stories that you want to tell, and that's the best way to start. And then once you do that, it will be obvious. All right, we're doing it this way. What if we tried this other extra thing that we know will reach the salespeople, for example, because they're out on the road all the time? Like once you start, then it will become obvious what to do. But usually people never start because they think, well, we're going to have to do 50 things. No, that means all 50 of them will be kind of half done. Just do one and do it really well and start like that.
So such a simple thing, but I will say, maybe with my HR hat on,
Yeah.
where I get stuck a lot is, yeah, you're right. It is just start, right? But then it's also then you get the feedback of like an employee heard it this way, or now employees are disgruntled, or you've pissed a group off, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
people like go a completely different direction because they want like you have, you said one thing, you
Right.
story told one thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
you check back in with everyone a week later, and now there's like 20 different stories about what you said. None of them are right.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
right.
how do you like try to be proactive and not have that happen? And then my second part is, okay, it happened. Now what? How do you fix
Right.
that?
Right. So the first part of the question is, all right, you go out and communicate it, and then people have all kind of filters, and they hear things, the way they want to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that matches what you say. Oftentimes it does not. That's fine. Humans are humans. As long as we still have humans in here, then
Oh
that's
yeah.
that's that's going to keep happening. So know that, and then have a way to get that feedback quickly so that you can then make whatever adjustments or keep repeating it more often, or you know rely on leaders and managers to help kind of answer those questions and deliver some of that information for you. But the most important thing is make sure that there are feedback because that's part of the whole communication. From me to you, that is not complete communications loop. From you back to me is a complete communications loop. So you've got to have that feedback because knowing that all that's going to happen, you want to get it as fast as possible so that you can then make whatever adjustments that you need to make. And then the second part of your question was, well, once that happens and then people are like, oh, they're all going off in 20 different directions, that's when you have to say the same thing, but then say it differently wherever
Mhm.
people are. So there are people in your organization, regardless of title, who are influencers. That's who everybody goes to for the meeting after the meeting. They're not necessarily hypos. They're not necessarily managers or leaders or whoever it is you think they are. It's whoever everybody else trusts. And so after the meeting, they say, well, I don't know what I'm going to do until I talk with John. And once John tells me, then that's how I think, feel, say, and do. Figure out who those people are. Everybody out there knows who they are. Usually leaders in HR don't know who they are, and that's
Yeah.
fine. So let's just find out who they are and make sure those people understand it, because they're going to be more believable and more trustworthy just because that's who all your employees are relying on anyway. So understand who they are, get cozy with them so that they can not only give you feedback, but can also help translate your messaging, even
Mhm.
if you're crystal clear and simple. They do a better job of translating things according to all those employees they influence. So make sure that they understand what's going on so that they can extend your reach and influence those other ones that you have a hard time getting to.
I love that concept. And also, too, if time permits, sometimes it doesn't, but if time permits, actually doing your speech or your storytelling to them as part of your practice to
Mm-hmm.
get feedback about what they're hearing and then help bring them along, then
Mm-hmm.
you can help them get more context to then be able to
That's
storytell
right.
it to those subgroups in your organization.
That's right. And also, depending on the size of your organization, maybe you have a couple of different locations. Before you go to a location where you don't spend most of your time, you can reach out to those people and say, hey, we're going to do, the quarterly update from your location next quarter. What do I need to know before I come out there? And most importantly, what should I not talk about at all because it's a hot button over there unless I have the solution to it? Or what are the hot buttons that I should talk about, that we should
Mhm.
face head on, so that then they're like, oh, well, we thought this stuff was a secret and nobody was ever going to do anything about it. This woman comes in here and just addresses it right head on. Like there are so many different things you can do with that advanced knowledge like that. And it's
Yeah.
those people who have it.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Well, Jason, I feel like we could talk about communication for quite some time, especially since I love to learn more about it. But as
Yeah.
we wrap up today's show, is there any last tidbit, thought, trick, tool in your tool belt that you'd like to share with the audience today?
Yeah. I like to think about communication. We're trying to get people to think, feel, say, and do whatever it is to help drive the business forward. And so to me, there's kind of three areas to do that in. Inform, which is tell everybody what's going on, tell them you told them, and then tell them what you told them again, so that everybody understands and is on the same page. As you grow and scale, it gets a little bit more difficult to do that, but that doesn't mean you should stop. It just means you have to try harder. And then the
Hmm.
second one is involve. So the first one's inform, the second one's involve. All of your employees there are on board because they believe in this organization, they believe in each other, they believe in in your vision as the founder. Involve them. The more that becomes their dream too, the more likely you are to have the kind of culture that will allow you to get to the success that you're looking for. And then the third one is around inspire. And this is all about recognizing employees all the time, even for the smallest of things, even if it's to recognize failure. Because a lot of times, particularly startups, don't want to, oh, we tried this and it went sideways and we don't ever want to talk about it again. That's a great story to tell because
Yeah.
everybody's going to fail. So, what can we do to highlight different kinds of story and inspire others, whether it's a success story or a failure story? What we're trying to do here is talk about the effort involved to try and make things better here. Not always the result, because the result could be something negative, but that's also a good thing. So, inform,
Yeah.
involve, and inspire are kind of the three easy ways to think about your comms and how you're kind of trying to drive your employee experience and your culture.
I love that framework and definitely will be using that in my future efforts as well. So thank you, Jason, so much for your
Yeah,
time.
thank
And
you.
thank you, audience, for listening. And we'll see you on the next one. Have a great day.